Everyone believed he was dead. The doctors signed the papers. The funeral was planned. But lying still beneath white hospital sheets, billionaire Ethan Cole heard his wife whisper words that should never be spoken over a dying man. And in that moment, he made a decision. If she thought he was dead, he would stay that way. The rain came down hard that night, heavy drops striking the windshield like warning shots. Ethan Cole gripped the steering wheel with one hand, the other resting loosely near the gear shift of his black luxury sedan. The city lights blurred ahead of him, distorted by rain and exhaustion. It had been a long day, board meetings, legal disputes, a final argument that still echoed in his mind. His wife, Claire, hadn't even looked at him when he left the house. No goodbye. No concern. Just silence. The clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. when the world suddenly tilted. A sharp swerve. A violent jolt. Metal screamed. Ethan never saw the truck coming. When Ethan opened his eyes again, the world was nothing but muffled sound and darkness. Voices echoed around him, distant and distorted. Pulse is weak. Possible internal bleeding. Get him intubated now. He wanted to speak, to move, but his body refused to listen. Then nothing. The doctors later called it a miracle. Ethan Cole should not have survived that crash. Severe head trauma. Multiple fractures. Internal injuries. For 3 days, he lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines that breathed for him, monitored him, kept him tethered to life by thin digital lines. On the 4th day, something changed. Not physically, but mentally. Ethan was awake, fully conscious, trapped inside a body that would not respond. Doctors came and went, nurses checked vitals, specialists whispered in hallways. They believed Ethan was in a deep coma. So did Claire. She arrives that afternoon dressed in black, perfectly pressed, flawless makeup, hair pulled back just enough to look grieving, but not broken. She took his hand. Or at least, she pretended to. Her grip was light, careful, almost distant. "Oh, Ethan," she whispered softly, glancing once at the heart monitor. "You always hated hospitals." Her voice cracked perfectly, practiced almost. Ethan listened. Every word. Every breath. Claire leaned closer, lowered her voice, and spoke the words that shattered any remaining illusion Ethan had left. "They said you might not make it," she murmured. A pause. Then relief. "If you don't, at least it'll finally be over." Ethan's heart raced beneath the machines. She exhaled slowly, as if a weight had been lifted. "I waited so long for this," she added quietly, "so long." Ethan understood everything in that moment. The coldness, the distance, the arguments that never made sense. This wasn't grief. This was freedom. And Claire believed she was finally free. 2 days later, the lead neurologist stood at the foot of Ethan's bed, his expression grim. "There's no brain activity improvement," he said gently. "We've done everything we can." Claire nodded solemnly. "How long?" she asked. "Hours, maybe a day." She pressed her lips together. Then let him go peacefully. Not a tear fell. At 3:14 a.m., Ethan Cole was officially pronounced dead. Machines were shut off. Monitors went silent. A sheet was pulled over his face. And Claire stepped out of the room without looking back. What no one noticed was the slight movement beneath the sheet. The shallow breath. The man who was very much alive. The service was held 3 days later. Private, elegant, expensive. Black cars lined the cemetery like a procession of wealth and power, paying its final respects. Claire stood at the front, dressed in mourning black, accepting condolences with practiced grace. "He was a good man," she told reporters. "A visionary. My husband." But when the crowd thinned, when the cameras turned away, Claire smiled. That evening, alone in the mansion that no longer felt like a prison, Claire kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine. She raised it slightly. "To new beginnings." Her phone buzzed. She answered without hesitation. "It's done," she said calmly. "They buried him today." A pause. Then a laugh, soft, relieved. "No," she continued, "he never suspected a thing." She leaned back against the marble counter. "Now we can finally live the life we planned." Across the city, in a quiet medical facility far from cameras and headlines, a man listened to the same phone call being recorded. A man officially dead. Ethan Cole opened his eyes and smiled for the first time since the accident. The first thing Ethan Cole learned about being dead was this: people stop hiding. When the world believes you're gone, masks fall faster than tears. Ethan watched it happen slowly, patiently, from the shadows. The hospital where he recovered was private, discreet, and far from the city, a favor called in by a doctor who had once owed Ethan his career. The official report said Ethan Cole's body had been cremated. There was no body to question, no grave to reopen. Just silence. And silence gave Ethan time. Time to heal. Time to think. Time to listen. Claire's phone call from the mansion had been recorded cleanly. No static, no distortion. Her voice was clear, calm, relieved. Not the voice of a widow. The voice of a woman who believed she had finally won. Ethan replayed it again and again, not out of pain, but out of precision. Every word mattered now. Every breath she took on that call was another thread he would pull later. But revenge wasn't his first instinct. Control was. 3 weeks after Ethan's funeral, the money moved. Trusts unlocked, accounts transferred, properties shifted into Claire's name with surgical efficiency. Lawyers praised her composure, bankers admired her decisiveness. "She's strong," they said. "She's handling it well." No one noticed how quickly she replaced grief with planning. The mansion filled with contractors, interior designers, security upgrades that weren't for safety but privacy. Claire didn't want to be protected. She wanted to be unseen. And that was exactly what Ethan needed. By the time Ethan was discharged, the man who walked out of that facility no longer existed on paper. No Ethan Cole. No billionaire. No husband. Just Daniel Cross. A quiet man with a clean background, a valid license, and a job history that made him invisible. The kind of man people forget the moment he leaves the room. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair darker, learned how to stand differently, less confident, less commanding. Power had been his identity for too long. Now it would be his disguise. Claire Cole hated interviews. She hated small talk, hated questions, hated anyone who looked at her longer than necessary. So when her assistant informed her that the new driver candidate was waiting outside, she barely looked up from her tablet. "Send him in." Daniel Cross stepped into the room. Head slightly lowered, posture relaxed, eyes respectful but not curious. "Perfect. Experience?" Claire asked, scrolling. 8 years, Daniel said calmly. "Private clients, corporate executives." She glanced at him for half a second. "What do you know about confidentiality?" Daniel met her eyes for the first time. That silence is part of the job. Something about his tone made her pause, but only briefly. "You're hired," she said. "Start tomorrow." Ethan lowered his head again. "Yes, ma'am." She never recognized him. Not once. The mansion felt smaller than Ethan remembered. Colder. Every room echoed differently now, lighter, as if the weight of his presence had been lifted and replaced with ambition. Claire moved freely through the space, laughing more, hosting dinners, drinking openly. And talking. She talked when she thought no one important was listening. Especially to Daniel. Take the long route, she'd say from the back seat. I hate traffic. Stop by the store, I need champagne. And sometimes, pull over, I need to make a calls. Daniel did exactly what he was paid to do. He drove. He waited. And he listened. The other man's. It didn't take long. Ethan had expected it, but expectation didn't soften reality. The man's name was Mark. Younger, confident, careless. He walked into the mansion like he owned it, shoes on the furniture, laughter too loud for a house that once respected silence. Daniel watched from the hallway as Claire kissed him without hesitation. No guilt. No pause. Just relief. She's not even pretending anymore, Ethan thought. And that was useful. Daniel Cross became part of the background. And backgrounds hear everything. He recorded conversations from the driver's seat, from the hallway outside Claire's office, from the kitchen late at night when wine loosened her restraint. She talked about the accident. Not directly, but enough. He never checked the car, she laughed once. He trusted me. Another night. I didn't push him, she told Mark. I just helped fate a little. Ethan saved every file. Organized them. Labeled them. Because truth without structure is just noise. The child. There was one thing Ethan hadn't prepared for. The housekeeper's son. A quiet boy, maybe 10 years old, curious eyes, sharp instincts. He watched Daniel carefully. One afternoon, as Daniel waited by the car, the boy approached. You look sad, he said simply. Daniel didn't answer. My mom says sad people notice more things, the boy continued. Daniel looked at him then. What do you notice? Daniel asked. The boy shrugged. That the lady cries at night when she thinks nobody hears. Ethan nodded slowly. Thank you, he said. The boy smiled and ran off. That night, Ethan added a new line to his plan. Claire's birthday approached. A lavish event, media, investors, friends. She wanted the world to see how well she had survived. How free she was. Daniel overheard her planning it in detail. Everything perfect, she said. I want this night remembered. Ethan agreed. So did he. The party was flawless. Crystal chandeliers, live music, cameras flashing. Claire wore red, not morning black, not subtle, a declaration. Daniel stood by the door in a tailored suit, just another hired presence. Invisible. Until he was. When the music softened, Claire stepped forward with a glass raised. I want to thank everyone, she said. This year was transformative. Laughter, applause. Daniel pressed a button in his pocket. The screens behind her lit up. Audio played first. Her voice. Clear. Unfiltered. I waited so long for this. If he doesn't make it, at least it'll finally be over. The room froze. Faces turned. Whispers spread. Then video. Phone footage. Recorded calls. Confessions. Claire's smile collapsed. What is this? She shouted. Turn it off. But the truth doesn't turn off. Daniel stepped forward. Slowly. Deliberately. He removed his jacket. Then his tie. Then he looked directly at her. I told you silence was part of the job, he said calmly. Recognition hit her like a wave. No, she whispered. Ethan Cole stood where her future had once been. Alive. Watching. I heard everything, he said. Every word you thought died with me. Security moved, guests backed away. Claire staggered. You were supposed to be dead. Ethan nodded. And you were supposed to love me. Justice. Police arrived quietly, efficiently. Evidence transferred hands. Claire didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at Ethan as they took her away. You planned it, she said flatly. Ethan nodded once. I listened. Epilogue. Months later, Ethan stood at the edge of the city, watching the sun rise. The mansion was sold, the name cleared, the past closed. He didn't rebuild his empire the same way. He built it quieter, smarter, because power wasn't loud anymore. It listened. She buried the man she thought she destroyed. She never imagined he'd be the one waiting at her grave.